Hello and welcome to the Roundtable. Today we are taking a look at a very serious issue, at the discrimination between caste, color, creed, gender, of course, at places of work. This, of course, is taking off from the controversy that was highlighted by Kerala Chief Secretary Sharda Muralidharan, who called out the discrimination on basis of her color and gender. She condemned remarks made by a colleague that talked about her skin. She is dark-skinned and said her work is dark, whereas her husband, who is fair-skinned, his work is fairer. So the comparison is not just skin. There is also a mindset at work over here that says people who are fairer, good looking will perform better. Dark skinned people are ostracized and castigated. In fact, she went on to write on a Facebook post, I think, which made a lot of sense. She talks about black. Why is black vilified? And says it's the black is the color, it's the essence of kajal, it's the promise of rain, it is the dress code of office, and for the luster of evening wear. So she says, let's learn to love our own blackness, but we should also learn to love every skin color. Even in today's age, why is this discrimination prevalent? Joining me on the show is Namita Bhandare. She is a columnist for the Hindustan Times, where she writes Mind the Gap on gender and social issues. In fact, she was one of the first to highlight this. Shailja Chandra, she is the Delhi's first woman chief secretary. And Reena Dhaka, she's one of the pioneers of Indian fashion designer, one of the first really in the field over here. But Namita, since you in a way was one of the first to take note of this controversy and the remarks. So, can you just, set the stage for us as to what?
So, it's exactly how you summed it up, really very brilliantly, if I may say so, that somebody made a comment. And obviously, this comment was, to use a very Gen Z term, very triggering, because across the board, people instantly responded. First of all, on the assumption that not dark skin and the associations of fair and lovely. Yes. I use the expression deliberately. And second is, why would you be commenting on a professional woman's looks at all?
Yeah.
And I find that in this day and age, we're in 2025, even if it is meant as a compliment, somebody comes to you and says, oh, you look so young, you look like your daughter's sister. And I don't know what to say. It's so inane. You please talk to me about my professional work. And I think Sharda Muralidharan's professional career, her CV is brilliant. Kudumba Shri, and she's been with the National Rural Livelihoods Mission. She's served in the center. She's served in a very progressive, this is Kerala, don't forget, is the number one state for gender in India. And yet, the topmost bureaucrat is being subject to this kind of blatant colorism and the completely superfluous need to comment on the way she looks. It's not relevant. And we need to junk it for what it is. So I'm really glad it triggered this kind of mass of response, because it was needed.
So the response is reassuring, at least. But, Shailja, you've been chief secretary at the time when Sheila Dikshit was chief minister. So two women were really, at the power positions in Delhi. You've been health secretary also. So did you, have this kind of the gender bias or any other personal comments during your line of work?
Priya, I must turn this on its head.
Okay.
If the context which Sharda Muralidharan spoke of was within the realm of the IAS, within the realm of a top civil servant, if it happened, it is despicable. I don't hold a brief for that. But let me say that she has, in a way, given a spiel which gives you the impression that this happens in her profession, which is the IAS. Right. It does not. Let me be absolutely clear. It does not happen. You come through a UPSC exam in which 0.2% of those who apply make it. Women have gone up to 31%. Not all of them are beauties. One or two of them were even having some disability. They were taken in. I've sat on interview boards. I have never seen prejudice on account of either selection, the fact that you are dark, or the fact that you don't speak very fluently or allowed to speak in regional language. It is your confidence, it is your presence, and it is your ability to think ahead like a chess game. You're not just doing something right and wrong there, you're thinking ahead. That is the ability that takes you. And I think in the context of what Sharda said, in the context of the IAS and the context that her husband is also an IAS officer, I used to know him when he was in the culture ministry. Yes, he is very fair. Yes, he is very handsome. It does not take one jot away from your authority if you show confidence and you know your work. If you're competent, none of this matters.
But Reena, you're dealing in the world of color, really.
But we are talking,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, she made the comment in a milieu which was IS oriented. She was not talking about the general public. Yes,
but
it's a
she said-
huge problem there.
But she says it's how the public perceives me. Am I right? That was the understanding.
No, I think somebody else made the comment. Let's
be fair.
set the record straight. She was responding to a comment. She could have chosen to ignore it. But by responding to a comment where the assumption is, this was a comment that was gendered as well as was colorist, she chose to respond. It actually mentions that she wrote out a response and then deleted it and then brought it back because she said there are many things to be discussed. And I think she has unpacked. So she's not at all implying that women in the IAS are being judged. She's just talking about a generalized concept.
No, but you are now giving it that interpretation. I have gone through all her YouTubes because I was very surprised. The context then, now it's a totally much bigger field. And let us be very clear that in a bigger field, it's not just looks. It's also in the West, for instance, a pretty woman or a handsome man or a tall man always will do better in interviews, always will be paid better. So it's the same prejudice in society. It is not a IAS thing.
Exactly.
But
So
yeah,
it's
we
not
agree,
an IAS. I'm so sorry.
We have to get Reena in, yes.
Your time.
I'm listening
I'm
to
just
them.
responding that don't forget that we come from a culture where Fair and Lovely, which is of course now rebranded as Fair and Glow, is a top-selling cream.
Yes,
and that
without a
fairness
doubt.
creams are, makeup artists. This is something that perhaps Reena will know more about. Are painting brides 6 or 7 shades lighter
Quite
than their
right.
actual shade,
Yes, yes.
color. So this is
That
a
I do not
conversation.
dispute. I don't dispute that at all.
So the color, that's what I wanted to bring Reena into this conversation is color an issue? Not just of course, the skin of the person, dark skin, fair skin, but even in terms of clothes, do they feel that? I mean, black is beautiful. We all opt for black rather. It's also
You're wearing
slimming.
it.
It's also slimming. So Reena's bold, she's wearing white. So, is there a...
Yeah, so irony is not lost here.
Yes.
Yes, fashion is one of the places because the early years of fashion in India were, say, the 90s, where we started doing catwalk shows. And the models were mostly brought in from Mumbai or because we got the better models there. And the better models were mostly the girls who were either from south of India or the Ghats, and they were tall. And they had these beautiful body structures. So in fashion, actually, we were looking out for the darker girls. They were sought out much more than the fairer girls, because in fashion, in film industry, when they went, the same actor, the dark skin actor, when she transitioned into a famous film actor, I found I was myself quite shocked. They've chemically peeled all their skin to become a part of the film industry because it's still not 100% acceptant of a very dark beauty. But in fashion, dark beauties were always loved. So we had the famous Naomi Campbell, who's now a legendary model when she came to India. But the early years were full of prejudice. I'll narrate an incident if there is time.
Of course, yes.
Okay, so when Naomi came to India, I remember I was obviously very young, so we were going to a wedding. I took her to an Indian friend's wedding. And so she wore one of my saris, and we went to Bukhara in ITC, and there was an Italian friend in common with us. And my God, at that point, the press hadn't released her name and thing. I could hear them say that she is a dark-skinned woman, so
that
on
is the
her face,
first thing that struck them
their
about
first
her.
thing, they weren't interested that she's beautiful and she's a supermodel, but now, of course, her legend is big. So, but yes, in India, from our parents to our families to marriages, the color of the skin is an issue, but in fashion, it's one field where we love them dark. And we still do. And the darker they are, the more they are kind of considered beautiful. And the makeup artists actually create a kind of a glow where it's good for darker skins. And one of our first makeup artists was Ambika Pillai. And she is from Kerala. And she had created makeup and base specially for the darker skinned Indian models. Many jokes behind the scenes and the stories. But yeah, fashion is a supportive medium for the dark so far.
But Amita, the issue is that it's a mindset that was reflected. Which is that even today, when a comment like this happens, I don't know if if we hear this in the whether it's said in this classrooms, schoolrooms, is dark still considered a slur or a?
Of course, look at the words we use, not just for dark-skinned people. I'm not going to repeat those slurs, but for people from the Northeast, people from the Far East. We use these slurs, and Indians themselves, we are very careful about framing ourselves as brown.
Yeah,
not God forbid black.
Yeah.
So that there is this bias, and it's the first thing you will ask when a child is born. Of course, first should be a boy, and second should be fair. So even a girl will do as long as she's fair.
And
of course, there's a lovely ad. I'll share it with you. Where this shades of brown. We're all shades of brown or black, whatever you want to call it. We are not white, but it's not just India. It's also all over Asia. It's in Africa. The sale of these creams, and no matter, there have been, Nandita Das ran a campaign and so on. So there have been these few, but it's not enough. We are obsessed with skin color.
Michael Jackson, he became white.
I know that when you were saying chemical peels, I was thinking of him. But as much as recently I did a small YouTube show, political chessboard. So I had a chessboard and I said, look at parliament through the chessboard. And I had the government on one side and the opposition on the other. And it was a camera angle. So the government, I moved that pawn first, and that was the black one. So someone said, tumne government ko kala kar diya. So see, this also comes. That was one of the feedbacks I got. So black is still, color of corruption, and white paper is the clean chit paper. So these are words that we've inherited, but something on this, and also being a woman, has that been used against you anytime?
You're widening it to being a woman.
Also, yeah. But if you want to also comment on the black first.
I want to talk about, as Reena did, two incidents. Which we had a tribal officer. She worked directly under me, and we had a health secretary, and who later became chief secretary at Delhi also. He was from the non-reserved category, from the reserved category. I won't say which one. Both of them shone and were taken very seriously. And this woman took on Mr. Antule, who was known he was the chief minister of Maharashtra and then Union health minister. He was quite a bully. And she took him on. It's her confidence. Nobody could play around with that confidence. So I think that it's not necessarily a color thing in the government setup. And your colleagues also will never try and be funny with you on this issue. Never. It is only if you are flipping your eyelashes, haven't done your work, you're giving excuses about ghar mein ye ho gaya, ghar mein wo ho gaya, they'll walk over you. But that happens in every profession.
Yeah, and that is also the gender card more than the color card.
Yes,
that is also something. But in terms of gender issues, of course, here again, I think women are more in demand than men in your world. But is there some discrimination, or is it an advantage being a fair woman versus or a dark woman versus a fair boy?
So it's professions. So in fashion, at workplace, I think it doesn't matter. It's fairly acceptant. It's probably a more tolerant field than others in India because the young are involved and they are very happy to be even with the workmen in that category. But I do, of course, being an Indian, I'm very well aware of the fact that even my own mother, when my one son, a little darker, and my other son, a fairer son, she was scrubbing the darker one, trying to turn him into a fairer one, ki dhoop mein jaake you've gone so dark. So it was significantly important to my mother. And my brother is in fact the opposite. We told him to open a solarium in India is a very bad business model.
Yeah, that's true.
He came up with this very avant-garde idea that I must open a solarium in India. So yes, fashion has bias. Young brides face a lot of bias, which is what we tackle as designers, wherein girls at a certain age, especially right now, I have found that there's paranoia about an age group getting married, where the males are not so interested because they need to settle down and have the financials ready, but the women have a clock. And beyond the age of 30 to 32, at least in the business-like communities, there is a kind of a huge panic that they need a beauty. And first definition of beauty, if you look up the matrimonial pages, will say fair. Wanted fair.
Yes.
And then they write beautiful. So beautiful is a state of mind. Who is there to define that boundary? Every person has beauty in them. So yes, I do believe that our talks today are all about educating and bringing back that faith that color should never matter. And we as a country should try and change within ourselves to not have that judgment constantly about their color.
So I'm going to take a break and come back and take a look at the mindsets, because as Reena said, optics do matter, and there is even in this controversy that came out, the post by the Kerala Chief Secretary, that if a person is considered fair, he's considered to be a better worker or she, rather than a dark-skinned person. So, the optics of how you come across or how you're perceived are also something we're going to be taking a look at after a quick break. Hello and welcome back to the NewsX Sunday Guardian Roundtable. We are here discussing the politics of color. Really, that's what it's come down to. If you look a certain way, if it's not so much your performance, rather than first thing that comes to mind is the presentation. And unfortunately, Namita, presentation is being fair. Is fair means lovely. Fair means a dark-skinned person will shakki nazar zyada udhar jayegi, even if you just look at the optics of it.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
So the question is that, do we need to fix the mindset? Do we need to...
Obviously, yes.
Of course,
yes,
we need to fix the mindset, but at what level? And also in
at
terms
every
of
level.
comics, because our gods are dark blue-skinned,
Of course, Draupadi was dark-skinned and very proudly dark-skinned. And,
so mythology is correct. So I don't know where
so
this...
I think this, let's not... I think we should bring in the elephant in the room. I mean, there is a lot of colonial hangover. The idea that white people were your colonial masters and so you looked up to them. There is a lot of caste involved because certain castes are associated with fairer skin and certain castes are
supremacy. Yeah.
Yes. So, you can't... So, the aspiration and of course leisure. It was the leisured class women and men who didn't have to toil in the sun and who could therefore be much fairer skinned than those who were toiling in the sun. So there is caste, there is class, and there is colonialism, all of it. So it is a complex conversation. It's not a simple conversation where you say, and you can't tell a nation of 1.3 billion people what they should want to be. So if the aspiration is to be fair, because fair has these caste class connotations, then how do you begin to dismantle that bias?
Yes.
So it's not an easy answer. That I'm the Facebook post of the Kerala Chief Secretary has started a conversation, but I hope it doesn't end here because there's a lot of talking and a lot of unpacking that we have to do.
And these conversations should begin from the classroom, right? From our homes.
From the homes and the classrooms. But it should not be just fairness. It's all to do with also prejudice against your looks, which are other than fairness. A flat nose. If you've got sharp features, you've got symmetrical features, you are favored. It does happen in interviews. So I'm just trying to say one should not fix this argument only around the complexion. It is also to do with prejudice, which happens in the West. As I was saying, a tall man, given other things being equal, will get the job. There is an inbuilt prejudice. Yeah. So we can't stop all this throughout the country. We can't, but the southern cultures have got over it. The southern cultures do not, they want fair brides and they want fair wives, but the fact remains that being dark is not considered as, oh my God, wo bahut hi kali hai. This sort of comment you will not get over there. In the north, yes, it is whatever you call it, there is an expectation that if you're fair, then you are worth having around. That we must overcome, but the overcoming has to be that women as a class, even men, must be able to feel confident that it is their output as a human being, their contribution to society which matters much more. And it does not matter what you look like. As long as you're decently dressed and you're well-groomed, fine.
And your accent, the way you speak,
It matters. It matters. That there I will definitely say that civil service or any profession, it is very unfortunate. How you punctuate and how you do your T's and D's and whether you have be able to convey what you're saying, even if it is wrong English, if you are caught pronouncing things, you are out of the door. That is sad, that is bad, it must change.
and
That
it's probably part of that colonial mindset.
It is very much so. And it is an anachronism now. But I think the good news is that more and more people have moved into speaking in vernacular, in English, in Kannada, in Tamil. They see nothing wrong with mixing up languages, which I think is what India should be proud of.
I think that is also what is coming maybe with this government, because I've noticed a lot of people nowadays have started printing their visiting cards, one side English, one side Hindi. Because, there is all this prominence in Hindi they're given. And just quickly, another anecdote, which, you said tall people tend to get the job more often. I was reading, this is the book Blink, I think, by Malcolm.
Yes, you got it.
Yeah, so it was mentioned in that book, and I was reading it and I had gone to meet Rajnath Singh. And that time there was this debate on who will be the next BJP president. In the race was Rajnath, Venkaiah Naidu, Pramod Mahajan, Sushma Swaraj. So I was telling him, is kitab ke mutabik to you should become, because it says tall people get the job. He was so easy, haan, sabse lamba to main hu, and he got the job. So whatever the reason is. So, these...
But I did read that among all the people who should be presentable, politicians need to be very presentable.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it matters there, because the public is looking at you.
So public figures, should they be in a certain way, in terms of...
I just feel when they're super obsessed with themselves, it's also kind of, it strikes judgment that how much time do they take doing these changes, and will they really give that time to the nation or in the public service they are, or will it be spent on hours of looking at themselves and their makeup, their hair, their grooming? To be honest, we even assess, because we're in this kind of trade, my mind would think that, oh God, this person is talking or getting photographed, which means there is people around him. That is why we are seeing the photograph. So the time spent on that versus the reality.
But Reena, today's world is like that. Even a jacket has got politicized. The Nehru jacket has become a Modi jacket. Politicians are very craft their look. If they're going to a temple, they will have that long bearded look. If they're going to a rally, they wear a sharp dark glasses. So there's a huge...
But the queen of that was Sheila Dikshit. You mentioned her.
Yeah,
she would wear these, mousy looking designer saris. You didn't know they were designer saris. They were always mousy looking, always politically correct. In the morning, she would be sitting in the slum saying, "Aapko pani, bijli mil gaya na?" By the evening, she was with the glitterati of Delhi.
Correct.
In some very, very posh place, and the same designer sari. She had not gone home and changed, but she carried it off.
Wow.
So there was a plan to her day spent that she will be able to transition wearing the same thing in a very tough environment where clothes, you can attract dust or they can get crumpled, to going to an evening. Yeah, so that is smart, intelligent planning for a working woman, I would say.
And to carry it off. Very few can.
Yeah.
We've had a home minister who changes kurtas 5 times in between.
We had a joint secretary in the defense ministry. I was young and I was working with him. I found it appalling. He used to go behind the screen, look at his face in the mirror before he went to call on the defense secretary and do his curls up like that. Men can be very, very vain.
Yeah,
also.
selfies men take them much more. Namita, that's your next column. Narcissist of men.
Vain men. Well, when you spoke about being tall, I was just thinking that the US has a very tall president. I don't think they've ever had a short president. And the current one is orange too. So
he's pulled off a lot of color contradictions in his thing.
Right.
So do politicians come to you in terms of looks, for dressing up, or is there a certain style?
What I like personally about politicians is when they can be real. Like as somebody who's a part of the country. For me, if someone is being real and not trying to, I love, of course, the fact that they wear traditional clothes. I like the fact that they wear the kurtas and thing. What I don't really like is sometimes when they're talking about Khadi and the Mahatma, and you can see the Gucci bag or the nylon from China. And from clothing perspective, you can quickly assess that, hello, this is cut out of another country. So yes, you want them to be slightly conscious of our country's crafts. They can use comfort cleverly. What is inside we can't see. Where it works, like maybe in footwear or something. But the overall focus should have sensitivity to our regional clothing, and more or less they're kind of getting it there.
They are, because
Yeah.
I just wanted to just come in that, when a politician dresses up, they're sending a message.
Yes.
So, you had the very bizarre visual of Mamata Banerjee jogging in Hyde Park in her rubber chappals, which she always wears. That's her staple, because that's the statement that she's making. And then, of course, you had Indira Gandhi and her beautiful handloom saris. And she did a lot to promote that, that craft. So, but, when you talk... Coming back to the idea of beauty, when you talk of it, and I think one of the big tragedies, it's not just fair and dark and sharp-featured, it's that we've, unfortunately, in this age of social media and globalization, there is a standardization that has come in. So, that dark, dusky, sexy kind of, kajal.
The ones we use.
Yes, the ones you use. That look is no longer, now you want everybody should have the same body shape. Even if it's not in your genetic DNA, Indian women are never going to be tall and statuesque. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that word, and now you made me conscious.
You pronounced it fine.
Okay. So, so this kind of, when I look at some of these young Bollywood actresses, they all look the same.
Hollywood as well.
Yeah, but I'm talking about our
factory
milieu.
production.
Whereas you looked at a Madhubala and you looked at a Bahidara, you will never forget those faces because they were so individual. And I think that is the tragedy, this kind of standardization of beauty. Who decides? And we all aspire then to that same goal.
That's true. In fact, we did a show saying who says size 0 is normal. In fact, I think Reena was on it also, where we told designers stop mamaking size 0. And both she and the other
But
designers
now our
said,
clients are becoming size 0 because they have so many things to eat. And they're all having access to it at their doorstep.
so much for the fight for plus sizes. But on that note, this has been, you want to say something in the last word?
Oh, I have many last words, so don't get me started.
We would love to listen to you.
Yeah,
It's fantastic.
I'm sure Roundtable doesn't want to listen to all that.
No, Roundtable is going to call you again. I'm so glad we persuaded you to come today, and we hope to have all of you back again soon. But for
I'm
now,
very, very clear that you must, professionally, after retirement, I did get opportunities to work in the private sector, on boards of companies. I've also, with the media, thanks to people like you, in my early days, I used to go a lot after retirement on TV. I stopped when I was being interrupted by anchors. You don't do that, thank you. So I would only say that neatness, well-groomed look, and confidence carry much more in every profession rather than the chitta gora, the skin color. It doesn't matter that much. But being untidy, being unkempt, takes away marks within minutes.
that's a good note to end on. I think that's a good advice also for all of you watching this show. So come back for more because we're going to have the same guest back again soon. But for now, that's it. Thank you so much.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.